In this world of so much negative news, we need inspiration. Be Inspired is created for appreciative audiences just like you. So please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any of our upcoming inspiring stories.
And the real truth of the matter is they would want you to believe that the guy that owns the bus company is always happier than the guy that drives a bus. But in real life, real happiness is usually found with people with less than more.
Be Inspired podcast. Real stories from real people. Sharing stories of love and loss, struggles and perseverance, laughter and tears, and overcoming adversity.
He has made millions, he has lost millions, but it's his strong belief in faith that this former Wall Street whiz kid used to battle depression and anxiety. And he's with us here today to tell his story. Hi, I'm Bert Baron.
And I'm Lisa Anderson.
And we welcome you to Be Inspired. Lisa, I don't know the first thing about Wall Street other than it's an address in New York City.
I watched the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, so that's about as much as I know.
I just remember an insult about lunch or something in the movie there. But we have a special guest with us here today who's going to share his incredible story and talk about a book that he's written as well. And it is so great to have joining us on the set today, Peter Grandich, who was here. Peter, welcome to Be Inspired. Great to have you with us here today.
Thank you for having me. It's a true blessing.
Hey, Peter. Yeah, I've had the pleasure of knowing Peter for many years now. Too many years. My goodness, I think it's over 20 years now. Bert, we started out at a small radio station. You'll appreciate this. Have you ever worked in a hole in the wall during your radio career?
Most times, yeah.
This was the ultimate WKRP in Cincinnati, right, Peter?
Except we called it in Howell.
Yeah, in Howell. We, like you say, we were the original reality show.
Yeah, if we videotaped it, we would have been the top 3 reality TV shows ever.
It was one of those places where you had a cast of characters. What'd you say? There was everything from an ex-FBI?
We had actually, he was an FBI agent. We had people from various walks of lives, people that have fallen, people that have risen. And the person that ran it was just a 1 in a million type of person. That's the nicest thing that I could say.
So we go back a ways, but it's always been good to connect with Peter and keep up with what you've been doing. Some incredible things.
Yeah. This season, by the way, of Be Inspired, made possible by IgA Nephropathy Foundation. 38 years in the financial arena, Peter. What did you know that other people didn't know about Wall Street?
Well, it wasn't something I intended to start with. In fact, I didn't even finish high school. I was actually a warehouse manager. Got a small amount of money when I married my dear wife in a wee little island in the North Atlantic called Ireland. She was the last generation where they would get a small diary. I became interested in stocks because the security guard at the warehouse played it. And before I knew it, I took a small sum of money and managed within a year to turn it into a fairly large sum, only to lose it through a penny stockbroker back in the early 1980s. And I started an investors club. A gentleman showed up, said, "You're in the wrong business." I went and became a stockbroker despite all of my wife saying not to. Mm-hmm. And within 3 years, I was head of investment strategy for a New York Stock Exchange member firm, and I made a forecast of a crash just before the 1987 crash. And then the day after the crash, for whatever reason, because to this day, I still believe it was inspired. It wasn't anything. I was only in the business 3 years, but I said everything was going to be great again. And in 2 years it was. And on Wall Street, you're only good as your last call, but you can live off your last call for 20 or 30 years. And so I got this moniker called the Wall Street Whiz Kid. And then it came popular because I was a white-collar guy, a blue-collar guy working in a white-collar business. And, I wasn't the educated type that normally are the folks. And one thing led to another. And here we are.
Peter, what do you think enabled you to make those calls? What was it inside of you? You're from the Bronx. Like you said, you didn't finish school. It's not something you would expect someone, who grew up.
I grew up without even the slightest of any faith teaching. I had a non-Jewish practicing mom who married a Catholic, non-practicing Italian father. I was only baptized as a child, but when I met Mary and had to get married in Ireland, I had to get, confirmed and all of that. And early on in the career, I would say I was more of a C and E Catholic. Christmas and Easter, I lit up, and the rest of the time I was turning the 10 Commandments into the 10 Suggestions. But by 1995, only in the business 11 years, I reached the American dream. I was 39, worth millions of dollars. I bought a huge home. I bought 5 racehorses at Monmouth Park, 2 race cars at Wall Stadium. And then I took up that terrible male addiction that changes more males than anything else called golf.
Oh.
And my wife said, in the top of my arrogance before the first big battle of depression, I must have played 3 or 4 days in a row and I was going out again. And she said, "You playing golf again?" I said, "I plan on playing golf every day for the rest of my life." And but God had other plans. And that's when the first of 2 major battles of depression and lost will to live, and really started a change in my life as the new millennium took hold.
Yeah. What do you think led up to that? Was it the stress? Was it trauma from? Have you always struggled with depression from an early age?
Yeah, there was that. It was in the family. It tends to be run that way. In this particular case, I had started to read my own, bio and starting to believe all the marketing stuff that I was this, whiz kid. And, but yet I found myself turning millions of dollars, quickly into just thousands of dollars. Now, normally most people would still be happy with those thousands, but the fact that I was so much higher was a sense of feeling of broke. And then there was the shame, and that's how, when you're not walking in, I believe, in a deep, devoted faith, you hear these voices telling you, how bad you are and all the mistakes you made. So I think that was the lead to the first depression. But what was great about it was, and it always is, it's just you can't believe it during the trial, was I did turn to my faith, and it became a rock, and it really led to what I would next do, what I enjoyed the most, getting involved with professional athletes and teams and things of that nature. So you couldn't have told me when it was happening it was good, but it really was a turning point in my life.
We interview a lot of guests, Bert, that have the struggles with depression and suicide, and it's such a hard thing.
I think in Peter's case, success is an addiction, Peter. I mean, there are people, you see people doing well, and they've got mansions, and they've got yachts, and they've got this incredible amount of success. It's easy to buy into that and be hooked on that and to want more and more and more. And the pressures that go into what you are doing to constantly just produce and grow and keep everything going in the right direction, that's overwhelming for anybody. Yeah,
Bert, I also believe, and it took experiencing it myself not once but twice, that Wall Street, knowingly or unknowingly, conspires with Madison Avenue to create this false facade that more money equals more happiness. If you can just make more, if you kind of look at all the advertisement, that's kind of the theme behind it. Come with us, do well, and all the things you would want, come with it. And the real truth of the matter is they would want you to believe that the guy that owns the bus company is always happier than the guy that drives a bus. But in real life, real happiness is usually found with people with less than more. And so that was one of the learning experiences that eventually I was able to incorporate into my business life as well as my personal life.
I see a shift that where people are becoming aware that there's more to life than...
There's a trend of people who are pursuing more rewarding work without the big fancy title and the big paycheck. And maybe at the end of the day, when you incorporate faith in that, Peter, maybe that's what brings about true happiness for people.
Yeah, I would hope that's the case. Unfortunately, I haven't seen it yet widespread in Wall Street and in the financial service industry. It's still an industry. In fact, when I would go into my second life, getting involved with professional athletes and dealing with, spent 13 years working with the New York Giants. When I asked the current firm at the time if we could publicly share about my Catholic Christian faith, the guy said, you could put a rock on the door, you can put a bull on the door, but you're not putting God's picture on the door. So while I'm certain there are plenty of people working within the financial service community that have a faith and want to practice it, it's not something widespread that you kind of get with it. And because I wear it on my sleeve so much these last several years, it even led to me having to exit the sports world.
Yeah, I want to ask you about what led to that with you kind of severing ties with the professional athletes that you represented.
Yeah, so 2001, I get involved with a gentleman named Lee Roussan, who was a running back on the first 2 Giants Super Bowls team. I was a diehard Jet fan at the time. So I knew that there had to be a God, because why am I dealing with guys that I used to root for to drop the ball and die? But and then the second young man through my door was another New Jersey-based young man, Keith Elias, who played for the Giants.
Oh, yeah.
And then I would meet the chaplain of the Giants and the Yankees, and that's where things changed, because he invited me in. Before I knew it, I was doing Bible study in chapel on a regular basis with these guys that I used to root against. And so many of them became friends. But then, as God did, he rewarded me with the great gift, the greatest athlete, both my father and I, who admired when he was playing. I became an opportunity to become great friends with him, Joe Klecko, who was a New York Jet. Yeah. And I've spent more time with Joe than my wife and daughter. So, but what happened was, as we got into being more involved and more players, I still stayed outspoken about my faith. And so when the kneeling starting in the NFL, I spoke about that. And then, of course, when the bringing in social and political issues to the forefront in the sports that really went against my principles as in my faith, I had to make a decision. You know, on one arm, am I this guy that believes in his faith and puts it first and foremost, or am I going to be hypocritical and say that here, but hang around an industry now that's producing and openly speaking about things that go against my faith? And that's when I decided in the year 2020 that I could no longer do that ethically and shut down the business. And it was, you know, a financial negative, and it certainly was hard because I love sports, but it was something that I had to make the decision on, and I live with that decision as we speak.
Yeah.
Faith is a great tool. If I'm putting a toolbox together, maybe I put faith right in the top drawer and make it nice and accessible for myself. That's true. And a fellow long-suffering Jets fan, every September to January is just torture for me. But I go back every year and just fingers crossed, and my heart is broken again year after year.
But you're loyal.
Yeah, loyal to a fault, yeah. You talk about in your book, which I want to get to next, Peter, about how the next threat that we have here in the United States, not going to be bombs falling from the sky. It's not going to be any sort of chemical weapon or anything. It's going to be something, almost an invisible enemy, an invisible threat that's going to be the next catastrophic event you see here in the United States. Elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, so in 2021, I felt I was led to speak in something that's certainly not good for business. I got to the point where I was publicly stating that America was entering its worst ever political, social, and economic period. It had nothing to do about politics. It wasn't because one group or the other, but it was just a sense of feeling of incorporating everything I've learned about finances and life and all, and everything I was seeing through my faith. And I became outspoken about it to the point where I said before the end of 2021, don't own any stocks, get out of bonds, and I don't sell anything that people would go into if they're not into that. So it wasn't like I was creating that because I had ammo or dry food or cabins in the woods to sell them, you know. But so it was not a popular thing, but it's evolved. And unfortunately, as we speak, as tough as things are now, I believe we have to go through a much longer period before those issues that I spoke of in it can have any real opportunity to ease up and get better. And it's simply because, as I like to say, is we've been living beyond our means. We find a country now that talks in trillions of debt to the level where the debt level now is we can't possibly pay it back. Something eventually has to be done because it's now at a point where it's too much that we don't make enough after we take care of everything to pay that back. And debt is here's the one time I'll tie my faith here as we speak. In the book that I believe in, and a lot of people around the world do, debt speaks negatively. There's not a positive verse in the Bible about it. In fact, there's a lot of warnings about it. But the Bible is also a great source for matters of finance because there's more verses about it and more parables than there is about heaven or hell. So whoever the creator was, whether you want to look at just as an historical book or you want to look at it as a religious book, They certainly had the right idea because they envisioned and saw something. And those are the type of things that we've gotten too caught up in. Most 7 out or 8 out of 10 families I meet, whether it's the average working right up to the athletes that were making 50 or 100 million a year, they're all living at least 1 or 2 levels above where their finances support. And my attitude is less is more. And if you think sharing all what I just shared with you brings people to my door, I can tell you it's not a money-making business, but I feel called, and that's why I believe everything that's gone through is to share this now, and then people can have their own choices. I don't think I'm to force anything on anybody or beat my chest about my faith and all, but I think it needs to be at least heard, and that was the main reason for the book. It certainly wasn't for a money-making edition, and it's in it. That's the 5th and hopefully final edition.
Fifth edition, final one, final tour. Yeah, a lot of people I don't think realize that about the financial things in the Bible and all that.
I learned a great analogy years ago that debt is like fire. You need a little bit to cook food and warm your home, but if it grows and burns your house down, obviously it's out of control. I think the debt we're seeing now, it's a raging inferno that we may never see extinguished, Peter.
George Carlin does a skit long ago, passed away. It's called Too Much Stuff. And I don't at all belittle this group, Public Storage. They were a worthy group. They didn't do anything wrong. But if you think about it, when we were younger, our parents never used public storage because there was no such thing as public storage. We had much smaller dwellings on average.
Right.
We had less stuff.
Yeah.
But every psychiatrist study says we're more messed up now than our past generations. So a lot of it is that we've been sold on stuff and things are going to bring happiness when in fact, whether or not it's a faith or whatever you choose to believe or not believe in, those material things will never satisfy it completely. It may for a period of time, but there's a sense of emptiness because if there wasn't, we wouldn't read stories of very wealthy people doing terrible things, taking their own lives or getting off on the wrong places.
Yeah, it's very true. And for yourself, I believe it's important for you to be able to put your head down on the pillow at night with a kind of clear conscience. Sure, no one's perfect. Everyone does, makes decisions that you feel like maybe I'm not really doing the right thing or what's true to myself. But for the most part, I think staying true to yourself and your beliefs just gives you a much clearer path.
Mark Twain said, it's something that I incorporated several years ago. Mark Twain said, if you always tell the truth, you don't have to remember what you said. And
very true.
It's something that I try to practice, even though at times I know it's not going to be widely accepted.
Very true.
Peter, when you encounter people with the dollar signs in their eyes that just live for more and more and more, and they're overvaluing just the materialistic lifestyle of this world, what advice do you give them? What do you say to them?
Well, it's very hard for them to hear it because they are caught up in that. Those are the people that tend not to want to hear what tend to say. But most of the type of people that I end up working with are people that had it or had a big fall. In fact, almost all the athletes that became part of our business for almost 20 years, because we had these great advisory members, they all had a fall. Several of them. Yeah. They all at one time were on the mountaintop and enjoying what the world tells you is great. But it was their experience of after the fall that got the attention of some, but it's still a very tough thing. It's still a world, especially because of how Wall Street is driven, where more money equals more happiness. And I think that's one of the big falsehoods that are out there.
And a tough lesson to learn for select.
And sometimes people can't recover from the lesson, and that's the real sadness of it all.
Yeah. And I know that now you're at a place in your life where I'm happy to say that you're much more at peace. I'm happy that, the bouts of depression, suicide are, something you dealt with, and you had a wonderful family by your side, and happy to have you here sharing what you know.
Yeah, it is. And I just lost my dearest friend, the person that wrote the foreword to my book. And no one could give better counsel. No one will ever be more important to me. And it was also a lesson of here today, gone tomorrow.
Totally.
And none of us are certain of anything, even short of the next breath. And if you live that way and understand it and treat this as a gift, as tough as it is, I think it makes it easier to get through the challenges that we're all going to face sooner or later.
Yeah, I believe that.
Very sorry for your recent loss.
Thank you.
A website where people can learn more about your story or perhaps more about your book?
Well, they can read the book online for free, petergrandich.com. That's what I'm down to. I'm kind of semi-retired in a sense, but I still try to share through a blog. And of course, I do some videos and selective interviewing, and to see Lisa again and nice to meet you as well, Bert, and all. Someone who I've admired for so long, who has such a compassionate heart. It was her who got me involved in one of the biggest things I'm involved in now, a farm here in Wall Township. Lisa, it's a privilege to have been interviewed by you, and it took a long time for us to be at a mic together again.
Together again after 20-something years, and I thank you for that.
And thank you, Bert.
This is great. Thank you. And we'll wind up by saying a former Jets coach, Herman Edwards, who now provides financial assistance to players, he said, look, you can live like a king for a year or live like a prince forever. If only we would just take the prince approach, right?
Amen.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. God
Thank
bless.
you, Peter.
I'm Bert Baron.
And I'm Lisa Anderson.
And thank you for watching Be Inspired.
Hi, I'm Peter Grandich, and I've been much involved in the financial service world for almost 39 years now. Much of my work can be found at my website, petergrandich.com. And it was a real joy to come today. Lisa Anderson, someone I've known for 20 years, who's a great community activist helping so many people. It was an honor to be sharing a mic with her again, and of course, meeting her great co-host, Bert.
Next on Be Inspired.
I just felt desperate. Like, how am I going to just get myself out of bed and try to pull myself together for these children? And then it struck me, what does a woman do when she has a long-term illness like cancer? No one is giving her permission to just hit the pause button, close the door, and say, I need a minute. But it all came together with the right people at the right time, and it is a thriving mission.
We're talking tens of thousands of women. It's hard to just measure the amount of impact that Mary's Place by the Sea has had in their lives.
There's just love and hope flowing through that home, and you cannot deny it.
Be Inspired with your hosts, Bert Baron and Lisa Anderson-Puleo. Directed by Rod Weber. Created and produced by Michael R. Doyle. Co-producers, Bert Baron, Lisa Anderson-Puleo, Rebecca Gruber, and Erwin Sternberg. Executive producers, Rod Weber and Sean M. Sternberg. Editor, Sean Dueñas. Filmed at New Beginnings Foundation, Wall Township, New Jersey. The IJ Nephropathy Foundation was established in 2004 to find better treatments and ultimately a cure for this chronic kidney disease, which can end in dialysis and needing a kidney transplant. For more information, please visit IGAN.org. In this world of so much negative news, we need inspiration. Be Inspired is created for appreciative audiences just like you. So please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any of our upcoming inspiring stories. Be Inspired is filmed in front of a live audience. If you would like to attend a filming of Be Inspired, or if you know someone who has an inspirational story that should be shared with the world, please contact us at info@mrdproductionsllc.com. That's info@mrdproductionsllc.com.